Before you scroll past this, I need you to hear this, not later, not tomorrow, but right now, because what you're about to realize might completely change how you see everything that has been happening in your life. You keep saying God didn't answer you, you keep feeling ignored, overlooked, almost abandoned in your prayers, like your voice disappeared into silence, like heaven went quiet the moment you needed it the most. But what if the truth is not that God stayed silent? What if the truth is much harder to accept? What if He did answer you, and you just didn't like the answer, so you pushed it away, ignored it, questioned it, and convinced yourself it never came? Think about it for a second. How many times did you ask for clarity, but when the truth showed up it didn't look the way you wanted? How many times did you pray for a sign, but when the sign appeared it didn't match your expectations? How many times did you ask God to remove something from your life, but when things started falling apart you called it chaos instead of protection? You called it loss instead of redirection. You called it pain instead of purpose, and in that moment you didn't realize that what you were experiencing wasn't abandonment. It was an answer, just not the one you were hoping for, because the truth is God doesn't always answer in comfort, He answers in truth, and truth has a way of shaking you, breaking illusions, exposing things you were trying to hold on to, and forcing you to face what you didn't want to see, and that's the part most people run from. Because it's easier to believe God is silent than to accept that He spoke and you resisted. It's easier to blame the waiting than to admit you ignored the direction, because sometimes the answer you receive doesn't come as a voice, it comes as a door closing, it comes as a relationship ending, it comes as a feeling in your gut that something isn't right, it comes as discomfort, as unease, as something deep inside you whispering this is not for you. But instead of trusting that voice you try to override it, you try to force what isn't meant. You try to hold on to what God is trying to remove, and then you turn around and say He never answered you, but He did, you just didn't accept it, because accepting it would mean letting go. Accepting it would mean change, accepting it would mean stepping into the unknown without guarantees, and that's terrifying, so instead you wait for a different answer, one that feels better, one that matches your desires, one that keeps everything comfortable and familiar, but that's not how God works. He doesn't align with your comfort, He aligns with your purpose, and your purpose will require you to release things that feel right in the moment but are wrong for your future, and that's where the struggle begins, because your heart and your purpose don't always agree, your emotions and your destiny don't always move in the same direction, and when that happens you're faced with a choice: trust what you feel or trust what you're being shown, and most people choose feelings, most people choose attachment. Most people choose what's easy over what's right, and then they wonder why nothing changes, why they feel stuck, why their prayers feel unanswered. But it's not that nothing is happening, it's that something already happened and you didn't move with it, you stayed where you were, holding on to what you asked God to take away, rejecting the very shift you prayed for, and now you're in this space of confusion, wondering why things aren't moving forward. But deep down, if you're honest with yourself, you already know why, because there was a moment, maybe small, maybe quiet, where you felt it, where you knew it, where the answer was clear, and instead of following it you questioned it, you delayed it, you ignored it, hoping it would change, hoping a different answer would come. But God doesn't repeat answers just because you didn't accept the first one. He waits for you to trust it, to act on it, to align with it, and until you do, nothing shifts, nothing opens, nothing moves the way you expect, because you're out of alignment with the direction you were given, and that's not punishment, that's protection, because forcing something that isn't meant for you will only lead to deeper pain later, and God sees what you can't see. He knows what's ahead, He understands the consequences of the paths you're trying to take. And when He says no, or not yet, or let go, it's not to hurt you, it's to guide you, but guidance only works if you're willing to follow it, and that's where everything changes, the moment you stop asking why God isn't answering and start asking if you're truly listening, not just hearing, but listening, not just waiting for confirmation of what you want, but being open to what you need, because those are two very different things, and growth begins the moment you choose need over want, truth over comfort, direction over attachment, because the reality is, you're not being ignored, you're being led, but you can't be led if you keep resisting the path, you can't receive new answers if you're still rejecting the old ones, you can't step into what's meant for you if you're still holding on to what isn't, and this is your moment to recognize that. This is your moment to stop blaming the silence and start examining your response, to look back and see where the answer was already given, where the sign already appeared, where the shift already began, and instead of moving with it you stayed still, and that realization might be uncomfortable, it might challenge you, it might even hurt a little, but it's also freeing, because it means you're not stuck. It means nothing is being withheld from you, it means the path is already there waiting for you to step onto it, and all it takes is one decision, one moment of honesty where you admit that maybe God did answer you. Maybe the clarity was already there, maybe the direction was already shown, and the only thing left now is for you to accept it, to trust it, and to move. Because the moment you do, everything starts to shift, doors begin to open in ways you didn't expect, peace replaces confusion, clarity replaces doubt, and suddenly you realize that God was never silent, not for a second, you were just listening for something different, something easier, something more comfortable, but growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from alignment, and alignment requires surrender, it requires trust. It requires you to let go of your version of how things should be and accept what is being shown to you, even when it doesn't make sense yet, even when it feels uncertain, because that's where faith comes in, not in having all the answers, but in trusting the one you've already been given. And right now, if this message found you, if something inside you is reacting, if you feel that quiet realization building within you, then this is not random, this is your confirmation, this is your moment to stop waiting for another sign and finally accept the one you already received, because everything changes the moment you do, and now that you're starting to see it, now that something inside you is quietly admitting that maybe the answer was already there, the next part becomes even more important because awareness alone doesn't change your life, action does. And this is where most people fall back into the same cycle. They realize the truth for a moment, they feel that deep clarity hit them, but then fear steps in, doubt creeps back, and suddenly they start negotiating with the very answer they just recognized, telling themselves maybe it wasn't that clear, maybe they misunderstood, maybe they should wait a little longer just to be sure, but what they don't realize is that this hesitation is exactly what keeps them stuck, because the longer you delay what you already know, the heavier it feels to act on it, the more complicated it seems, and the easier it becomes to fall back into old patterns, and that's how people spend months, sometimes years, asking the same questions, praying the same prayers, waiting for the same clarity that already came and was quietly ignored, and you don't want to stay in that place. You don't want to keep circling the same lesson just because it's uncomfortable to step forward, because the truth is growth will always feel uncomfortable at first. Letting go will always feel like loss before it feels like freedom and choosing anew. Direction will always feel uncertain before it feels right, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. It means you're stepping out of what's familiar and into what's meant, and there's a huge difference between those two things, because what's familiar will keep you safe but stuck, while what's meant will challenge you but transform you, and right now you're standing in between those two, holding on to something that feels known while being pulled towards something that feels unknown. And that tension you feel inside, that confusion, that back and forth, that is not a sign that you're lost, it's a sign that you're being asked to choose, to finally stop standing in the middle and commit to the direction that was already shown to you. And yes, it might mean walking away from something you once believed was right for you. It might mean releasing people, habits, situations, or even dreams that no longer align with who you're becoming, and that's not easy. No one talks about how heavy that part feels, how you can know something isn't meant for you anymore and still feel attached to it, how you can recognize the answer and still struggle to accept it fully, but that doesn't make you weak, it makes you human, and growth is not about pretending it doesn't hurt, it's about choosing what's right even when it does, because every time you ignore that inner knowing, every time you push aside that quiet voice telling you to move, you create more distance between where you are and where you're supposed to be, and that distance feels like frustration, like confusion, like emptiness, like something is missing but you can't quite explain what, and that feeling will not go away until you realign with the answer you were given, until you stop resisting and start trusting, because the moment you do, things begin to shift in a way that feels almost unexplainable, not instantly perfect, not suddenly easy, but aligned. Like pieces finally starting to fall into place, like a weight slowly lifting off your chest, like clarity replacing the constant noise in your mind, and that's how you know you're moving in the right direction, not because everything becomes effortless, but because even in the challenge there's a sense of peace, a sense of knowing that you're no longer fighting against what's meant for you, and that's something you can't fake. You either feel it or you don't, and if you've been feeling the opposite lately, if you've been feeling heavy, stuck, drained, constantly overthinking and questioning everything, then that's your sign right there, not that something is wrong with you, but that something is out of alignment, and you already know what it is, you've felt it, you've seen it, you've tried to ignore it, but it keeps coming back in different ways, through situations, through emotions, through repeated patterns that don't seem to change no matter how much you try, and that's because the lesson hasn't been accepted yet. The answer hasn't been acted on yet, and life has a way of repeating what you avoid until you finally face it, until you finally say enough is enough and choose differently, and that moment, that decision, doesn't have to be dramatic, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be real, a quiet shift within you where you stop running from what you know and start moving toward it, even if it's just one small step, because one step leads to another, and before you realize it, you're no longer in the same place you were, you're no longer asking the same questions, you're no longer feeling that same confusion, because you've chosen alignment over resistance, and that changes everything, and the most powerful part about this is that once you do it, once you truly accept the answer and act on it, you'll start to see that God was guiding you all along, not just in the big obvious moments, but in the small subtle ones too, in the things that didn't work out, in the doors that closed, in the discomfort you couldn't ignore, in the thoughts that kept returning no matter how much you tried to push them away. All of it was part of the answer, all of it was part of the direction you were being led toward, and now you have a choice to either continue resisting it or finally trust it. And if you're hearing this right now, if you've made it this far, then deep down you already know what choice you need to make, you already know what you've been avoiding, and this is your moment to stop delaying it. To stop overthinking it, to stop waiting for a clearer sign, because clarity doesn't always get louder, sometimes it just waits for you to listen the first time it spoke, and everything you've been searching for on the outside begins the moment you respond to what you already know on the inside. And if you're still here, still listening, still feeling that quiet tension inside your chest that you can't quite explain, then this is where it gets real, because now it's no longer about understanding, it's about honesty, the kind of honesty that most people avoid because it forces you to confront yourself, not your situation, not other people, not your past, but you, your choices, your resistance. The moments where you knew better but didn't do better, the times where the answer was clear but you chose comfort instead, and that realization can feel heavy, it can feel like regret, like you wasted time, like you missed opportunities, like you delayed your own growth, but don't let that thought trap you, because this is not about looking back with guilt. It's about seeing clearly so you can finally move forward with intention, because the truth is you didn't ruin anything, you didn't miss what's meant for you. You just paused your progress by resisting what you already knew, and the moment you stop resisting, the moment you shift from avoidance to acceptance, everything that felt delayed begins to realign in ways you couldn't see before. But erase the part you need to understand deeply. Accepting the answer doesn't mean everything suddenly becomes easy, it means everything becomes clear, and clarity can be uncomfortable because it removes excuses, it removes the, "I don't know what to do" mindset. It replaces it with, "I know exactly what I need to do, I've just been avoiding it," and that truth can feel confronting. Because now the responsibility is yours, now the next step is yours, now the change depends on your willingness to act, and that's where most people hesitate again, because action requires courage, and courage doesn't mean you're not afraid, it means you move anyway, it means you stop waiting to feel ready and start trusting that readiness comes after you begin, not before. Because if you wait until you feel completely certain, completely comfortable, completely fearless, you will stay exactly where you are, repeating the same cycle, asking the same questions, feeling the same frustration, and deep down you already know that's not what you want anymore. You're tired of that loop, tired of feeling like you're stuck between knowing and doing. Tired of carrying the weight of decisions you keep postponing, and that's why this moment matters so much, because this is your chance to break that cycle, not tomorrow, not someday, but now, in the quiet decision you make within yourself to stop ignoring what you know, to stop negotiating with the truth, to stop convincing yourself that you need more time, more signs, more confirmation, because the confirmation is already here. It's in the way this message resonates with you. It's in the thoughts that have been repeating in your mind for days, maybe weeks, maybe even longer. It's in that feeling you keep trying to push away but it refuses to leave. That is not confusion, that is clarity waiting to be accepted. And the longer you delay it, the louder it becomes, not to overwhelm you, but to guide you, to bring you back to alignment, because you're not meant to live in constant doubt, you're not meant to feel lost all the time, you're meant to move, to grow, to step into what's calling you. But that only happens when you stop holding on to what's pulling you back. And yes, letting go is hard, walking away is hard, choosing differently is hard. But staying stuck is hard too, living in confusion is hard too, constantly questioning yourself is hard too, so you have to ask yourself, which heart are you willing to choose, the one that keeps you where you are, or the one that moves you forward, because either way, there is a cost, but only one of those choices leads to growth, only one of those choices leads to peace, only one of those choices aligns you with what you've been asking for all along, and deep down, you already know which one that is, you've known it for a while now. You just haven't fully acted on it yet, and that's okay, because awareness is the first step. But don't stop there, don't let this just be another moment where you feel inspired for a few minutes and then go back to the same patterns. Let this be the moment where something actually shifts, where you decide that enough is enough, that you're done waiting, done avoiding, done pretending you don't see what's right in front of you. Because the truth is, God didn't stop answering you, and He's not waiting to speak again. He already has, through your experiences, through the things that didn't work out, through the doors that closed, through the peace you felt when you considered letting go, through the discomfort you felt when you tried to hold on. All of that was guidance, all of that was direction, and now it comes down to you, whether you trust it or continue to resist it, whether you step forward or stay where you are. Whether you finally accept the answer or keep asking the same question, hoping for something different. And this is where everything changes, not because something new is being given to you, but because you're finally ready to receive what was already there. And once you do, once you truly align with it, you'll look back at this moment and realize that this was the turning point, not when God spoke, but when you finally listened. And this is the part most people never reach, not because it's hidden, not because it's complicated, but because it requires a level of surrender that feels unfamiliar, a level of trust that can't be forced, only chosen, because now you're standing at the edge of a decision that will quietly define the direction of your life, not in some loud dramatic way, but in a subtle internal shift where you either continue to delay what you already understand or you finally move with it. And what makes this moment so powerful is that nothing external needs to change for everything internal to change. No new sign has to appear, no voice has to come from the sky, no miracle has to happen in front of your eyes, because the real shift happens the second you stop asking for proof and start acting on the clarity you already have. And that's where faith becomes real, not in waiting, not in hoping, but in moving without needing everything to make sense first, in trusting that the step you take now will reveal what you need next, even if you can't see the full path yet. Because you were never meant to see the entire path, you were only meant to take the next step, and the next, and the next, and with each step something inside you begins to change. The doubt that once felt so loud starts to quiet down, the confusion that once felt overwhelming starts to fade, and in its place comes a sense of direction that feels steady. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer fighting against what you know, you're finally moving with it, and that alignment creates a kind of peace that you can't find by staying still, a kind of confidence that doesn't come from certainty but from action, from proving to yourself that you can trust your inner knowing, that you can follow through on what you feel called to do, and that changes the way you see everything. Because now instead of questioning every step you start recognizing patterns, you start seeing how things connect, how the moments that once felt like setbacks were actually setting you up for something different, something better aligned, something you couldn't have reached if everything had gone the way you originally wanted. And that realization brings a different kind of gratitude, not just for what worked out, but for what didn't, not just for the doors that opened, but for the ones that closed, because now you understand that every answer you thought you didn't receive was actually guiding you somewhere else, somewhere you couldn't see at the time, and this is where your perspective shifts completely, because you stop seeing life as something that's happening to you and start seeing it as something that's working for you, even in the moments that don't feel good, even in the situations that challenge you, because you know now that there's direction in all of it, there's purpose in all of it, and most importantly, there's guidance in all of it, but only if you're willing to accept it, only if you're willing to trust it, and that trust is something you build step by step, decision by decision, moment by moment, every time you choose alignment over resistance, every time you choose truth over comfort, every time you choose to act instead of delay. You strengthen that trust, you deepen that connection, and eventually you reach a point where you no longer need constant reassurance, you no longer need repeated signs, because you've learned how to recognize the answer the first time it appears, you've learned how to listen, not just with your ears, but with your awareness, with your intuition, with that quiet inner knowing that has been guiding you all along, and when you reach that place, everything changes, not because life becomes easy, but because you become aligned, and alignment changes how you experience everything. It changes how you respond to challenges, how you handle uncertainty, how you move through situations that once would have stopped you, because now you're not reacting out of fear, you're responding with clarity, and that's a completely different way of living, a completely different level of peace, one that doesn't depend on everything going your way, but on you staying true to what you know. And that's what this has been about from the very beginning, not whether God answered you, but whether you were willing to receive it, and now you are, now you see it, now you feel it, now you understand that the silence you once felt was never empty, it was filled with answers you weren't ready to accept yet, and that's okay, because you're ready now, and that readiness doesn't come from waiting longer, it comes from deciding differently, from choosing to trust what you already know instead of questioning it again, from choosing to move instead of staying still, and that choice, that simple but powerful shift, is what opens everything you've been waiting for, not because it was being held back from you, but because you were holding yourself back from it, and the moment you release that, the moment you step forward without needing everything to be perfect, without needing every doubt to disappear, without needing every fear to be gone, you step into a different version of yourself. One that doesn't wait for answers but recognizes them, one that doesn't resist change but moves with it, one that doesn't feel abandoned but guided, and that's when you finally realize, not just in your mind but in your experience, that God didn't stop answering you, not even once, you just learned how to listen.